Welcome to the 6 Steps to Insanely Great Presentations. Hold on. There we are. I am Marta Kagan at MZ Kagan if you want to be friends on Twitter. And I'm the founder of Ace the Pitch Online Academy. And I have been creating presentations for way too long. And I'm going to share with you today so much good stuff. So first being this little fact, which is part of my mission, part of why I started Ace the Pitch Online Academy. Okay, there are 30 million presentations delivered all over the planet every single day. In Belgium, where Niels is, in Amsterdam, where Joanne is, and every other place. And the bad news is that most of them kind of leave me feeling like this picture. Yeah? And I know you guys can relate. Some of you are already saying in the chat box, yeah, me too. Yeah, because a lot of them look like this. And if you can imagine what this sounds like, they sound like this, right? To me, this is not a presentation, guys. This is a document. It's a document. And a document is a very different experience than having someone teach you, inform you, inspire you, educate you live and in person, like I intend to do today. Statistically, they all suck. Amen, Matt. You are so right. I often say 99% of the presentations given on any given day are boring, which is why I worry that we will all end up like this cartoon. One day, sitting there in front of Satan himself in purgatory and being recruited to torture other humans with our poor PowerPoint skills. This is not a future I want for any of us. And that's why I created Ace the Pitch, why I'm giving this webinar, why I'm constantly sharing what I know about how to reverse that horrible statistic. Now, just sort of show of virtual hands, you can put a number in the chat box. How many boring presentations did you endure this week alone? Like, just type in a number. Okay. Too many to count. Yep, I hear that all the time. 12? David, 12? Really? You poor man. Yeah, 2, 3, okay. Yeah, so pretty much all of you that are sharing are saying a bunch, more than you would like, right? I know the feeling, I know your pain, and I have a confession to make, and that is that I may have tortured a few people with PowerPoint myself. Years ago, okay, years ago. But I too have been guilty of not just suffering through them, but inflicting them on others. And, you know, the thing is, we all share this problem. Here's why. This is going to sound familiar, I think. Okay, so you've been pursuing, say, a client, or you're trying to get a meeting with the CEO of your company to share, you know, your amazing new idea for a project or a product, whatever, a big opportunity. You finally get it. You finally get the call. They're going to meet with you. You're like, woohoo! This is awesome. I'm so excited. You start celebrating, right? And then as the meeting gets closer, you start thinking about what you're going to present, and you're a little nervous, and you kind of procrastinate, and you're like, okay, but I have that deck. Oh, and Joe did this great pitch recently. Maybe I can borrow some of those, and I'll like improve the one I used last time I pitched, you know, that venture capital firm or whatever. And then the night before, you're like, oh my God, the meeting's tomorrow. I need to finish my slides. And you pull an all-nighter or something close to it, right? You're scrambling, you're taking slides from here, you're taking slides from there. You work up until the last minute. You wake up the next morning, you go to the meeting, and you're like, I hope this goes well. I hope they get it, right? And part of the problem here is because PowerPoint does this to us, right? Like when you open up PowerPoint to start working on a new presentation or just to add a new slide, right? Let's say you're just improving a presentation that already exists. It does this to you. It gives you this screen. And it sort of begs for you to just put in a title of what the slide is about and then put in all this text with bullet points. So give me bullet points. No offense, PowerPoint is a great tool, but this kind of puts us in the position of the panic the night before. And then step 3, which is, here's my face of, I hope they get it. And then you're like, I don't think they got it. I don't think they got it, right? Step 3 is that despair, that, geez, if I had only said this, if I had only remembered that, you know, right? You guys familiar with this? Show of hands in the chat box. Yes, yes, yes. You feel my pain. So I've been in that position many times, and this is what led me eventually to say enough. Okay. I understand how important presentations are as part of the success of my career, the success of my business nowadays, my ability to influence others, to communicate with others. And so I need to fix this. So I started studying great presenters and great speakers. I watched a ton of TED Talks. I went to conferences where the best of the best were speaking. I read books. I watched videos. And then I had an opportunity in 2008 to give a great pitch, to give a presentation to a group of folks. And I decided to apply what I had learned. I was like, I'm not going to do that night before panic thing. I'm going to do it right. And so I put together this presentation, which for me had boldly gone where no presentation had gone before. Number one, I put a 4-letter word with asterisks just to keep it PG-13. I put a 4-letter word in the title and on the closing slide. And I use this much simpler, more visually clean approach where I'm just sharing one idea per slide and I'm really driving one message home. We're going to talk about that when we get to the 6 steps. Anyway, the thing kind of went viral, as we say. In a matter of days, it had tens of thousands of views and pretty soon hundreds of thousands of views. And remember, this was in 2008 when social networks were still a new thing. And so this presentation, what the F is social media, was like, people were like, what are you even talking about? So 500,000 views in a couple weeks was off the charts. So I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Is this my 15 minutes of internet fame, or did I stumble onto something? Is this just a fluke? So a year later, I decided to do the sequel to that presentation. I sort of kept the same title, the same theme, but I updated all the stats. And turns out this one also did really, really well. It was even picked up by Mashable and written up as sort of the definitive presentation about social media in 2009. Well, in 2010, I was like, well, let's try this again. Let's do a trilogy. Same thing, over 500,000 views. And this is kind of the formula that kept going. In 2013, I had, at that point, my most successful social presentation to date, What Would Steve Do? That one had 1.5 million views within the first 2 weeks. And then most recently, when I launched Ace the Pitch Online Academy, I did a free webinar, and that got written up by LinkedIn at the end of the year as one of the must-read best slide shares of 2015. So what's clear to me is that this is not a fluke. This is a formula, and I've been trying to distill that formula into very specific tips and suggestions. That's the content I put into my course, Ace the Pitch. And it's a formula that works. It's a formula that has delivered over 10 million social views across the presentations I've created and has helped to raise over $100 million in venture funding. And I'll also say that for me personally, it launched my career in a direction I knew I wanted, but I didn't quite expect. I've had opportunities to go from marketing manager to VP of marketing in under 2 years, to work with some of the most successful startups in the world, to work with some of the most fascinating, brilliant entrepreneurs and CEOs in the world, and now to run my own business from home or wherever I want to be in the world and teach awesome people like you this. So I can tell you that not only is it a proven formula, but it's one I'm going to share with you right now because I want you to have that kind of success. Okay, one caveat before I get into these 6 steps I promised to share, and that is that we only have an hour together. Okay, that's not a lot of time to distill 10 plus years worth of learning, trial and error, experience, insight, etc. I'm going to do my best. But I know you're probably at the end of it going to want more. You're going to want more. So stick around, because at the end, I'm not only going to show you and tell you how to get more, but I'm going to share a few little surprises. So stick with me to the end. Oh, we're going to have a Q&A at the end too. So if you have questions, you can type them in the chat box anytime, but we'll have a open forum Q&A at the end there. All right? Okay, so let's talk about the 6 steps to insanely good presentations, which Sammy Hagar would do like a right before that. That'd be cool, right? Patty, let's work on that. So step number 1 is it seems sort of obvious, right? As you're reading it, have one core message. Those of you who are like, duh, Marta, I applaud you. But here's the truth. Most of us forget about that along the way because we start making slides, right? I'm giving a presentation, therefore I must open PowerPoint and create slides. And as soon as you start creating slides and PowerPoint begs you to put, the text bullets in, and you're borrowing some slides from a deck you did before or from a deck someone else did, and your assistant's helping you, and your boss is sending stuff he wants you to include or she wants you to include. And pretty soon that one core message, the reason why you're giving the pitch in the first place, is sort of mixed up and buried within this bunch of slides. Yeah, that's right, Joe. You know what I'm talking about. So you end up with stuff like this. This was a slide I actually got from a client not too long ago. And I had to call her, and I was like, I don't know what this means. I tried. I read every word. I tried to back up and just look at it. I have no idea what you're trying to say. I get there's something about a platform, but there's too much going on, right? The core message is buried. Here's another example. 2 different charts, 1 headline, a logo, 3 bullet points, 3 subheaders, source information, multiple, just blah. A wise man named Confucius once said that a confused mind says no. And that is exactly what happens when you take that approach, when you lose your core message, when you just go in with 7 messages. I want to say all these things. I want to tell them how great my product is and the history of our company, and we have the most incredible team, and we have amazing investors, and blah, blah, blah. Confused mind says no. Okay? So the first tip I'm going to give you in terms of how to avoid that confusion and have that one core message is to begin every presentation with the end goal in mind. This is how I approach it. I start by asking myself 3 simple questions. Number 1, what is it that I want my audience to feel? And yes, I start with feelings first. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. But what do I want my audience to feel? Do I want them to feel inspired? Do I want them to feel hopeful? Do I want them to feel safe? Do I want them to feel uncomfortable? Whatever it is, that feeling is ultimately what's going to generate some action. So I really start with that question. What is it that I want my audience to feel during and after my pitch? The next thing I ask is, what do I want them to think? Right? Like if there's just one thought, one little mantra that goes over and over in their heads, or one phrase that they share with their team, their boss, whoever else they talk to after they leave the pitch, what is that one thought going to be? And get as specific as you can. Yes, I'm glad you're writing this down. Well done, Anne. The third thing is, what is it that I want them to do? And that's where most of us start, right? What do I want them to do? I want them to buy my product. What do I want them to do? I want them to sign up for Ace the Pitch. What do I want them to do? I want them to fund my startup, right? We all think that way. But I'm suggesting you do that as the third question in the 3. So feel, think, and do. If you can answer all 3 of those and then boil those answers into one simple, short, concise, core message that is the backbone of your entire pitch, that is the killer formula for success. Okay? And that's just my first tip. All right, so buckle up. Here comes the next one. The second one is what I call my if I only had 5 slides principle, which, P.S., this alone is worth like $10,000. I'm not kidding you. It took me over 10 years to figure this out, and now it is gold. I have this in my back pocket all the time. It's like the elevator pitch, right, that everyone tells you need to have. What's your elevator pitch? What's your answer to the question, what do you do? Or what's your business about? This is how it translates into presentation format. And I'm going to explain in a minute how it also helps you to build an insanely great presentation or pitch. So 5 slides. Slide number 1 is the situation. This is like what's going on in the world right now that is setting you up for what you're about to share. So using myself as an example, right now, the situation is that PowerPoint is the de facto language of the business world. I don't care if you're just starting in your career, you're a 5-time CEO of a $10 billion company, or somewhere in between, you're going to be expected to present in front of other humans. And most presentations are really boring. Actually, I'm leading into the next part. That's the problem, right? So the situation, presentations, the problem, they're boring, they're confusing, they're too wordy, they're lackluster, they don't get results. The opportunity, slide 3, is to change that for yourself, for your career, for your business, right? To learn the way that very successful professionals, speakers, entrepreneurs ace their pitch, right? To learn things that would otherwise take you a decade or more to learn. The solution, in my case, is my online course, Ace the Pitch. And P.S., I'm not trying to pitch it to you. I'm using this as an example. I'll pitch it to you later. The solution is take this course, read this book, buy this product, whatever it is. And then the call to action becomes the short rally cry, right? So in my case, it's if you do this, you will ace the next pitch and the one after that and the one after that and every one after that. And that's really what I want for you. So this 5-slide pitch, the reason why it's so beautiful is not only does it serve as your elevator pitch for the pitch, but it also becomes the next layer of that backbone. You have your core message baked into all 5 slides, and then you can build from there. You can build a 15-minute, a 45-minute presentation based on this simple backbone. That's one of the things that we'll get into if you enroll in my course. It structures really nicely into a 3-act story structure, which is another beautiful thing to help you get your core message across, right? We're all familiar with the 3-act story. They're sort of ubiquitous, just like PowerPoint. Act 1, the introduction. Act 2, you introduce the problem, right? The opportunity, the solution. And then Act 3 is sort of the moral to the story, the conclusion. So that's why that works so well. Okay, final pro tip for this particular step is to start with paper and not software. This is actually how I start every single presentation I work on, with a stack or 2 or 3 of Post-it notes. I don't touch PowerPoint or Keynote or any software until I'm much further down the process. So I'll take that stack of Post-its and I'll start brainstorming ideas, concepts, quotes, stats, questions, any little tidbit that relates to the 3 questions I answered in the pro tip I shared a moment ago, and in that 5-slide pitch outline that I just shared with you. And then once I have that huge stack of Post-its, it's easy to group them, or easier to group them, to remove ones that I'm kind of like, now that's kind of a little bit away from the core message, and to start create a real structure that ultimately will turn into a presentation. Okay? When you start with PowerPoint, it sort of forces you into that bullet point method that takes away all the yumminess I just shared. Okay? Yes, good. I'm glad you guys love it. Some of you are saying, yes, I use index cards. Awesome. Pick your tool, but the point is paper, not PowerPoint. Okay? All right, step number 2 is to keep it simple. Now this one too, you might be thinking, yeah, I know, I should keep it simple, Marta. I've heard that before. Good. You've probably heard it for decades, right? I mean, Leonardo da Vinci said this centuries ago. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, which is sort of a contradiction in terms if you think about it, right? Simplicity and sophistication. Simple, sophisticated. But that's exactly what it is. It is the ultimate sophistication. I can never say that word, holy God. Sophistication is not simple to say. No, but the reason why it is so sophisticated is because it helps our brains work better. Our brains are wired so that we can only hold 3 to 4 bits of information at one time, 3 to 4 pieces of new information. I had this experience the other day in the kitchen with my kids, right? I'm trying to cook dinner. One of them's asking me a question. The doorbell's ringing and the dog's jumping on my leg. And I'm like, cannot function, too many things. So when you're sitting in front of a screen and someone's showing you a slide with 6 to 8 pieces of information on it, like the ones I showed you a few moments ago, inevitably your brain's confused, no, and nothing gets remembered. Nothing really gets through and nothing sinks in. So simplicity helps to fix that and to make sure that the information you actually want to share with your audience does get in and doesn't get filtered out. So pro tip number 1 here is to obey what I call the 1-7-140 rule. So the 1 part of 1-7-140 is the most important part. Okay, you guys paying attention? The 1 is the most important part. This is the immutable law. And that is 1 idea per slide. 1 idea per slide, not 2 pieces of data 1 idea per slide, 1 idea per, say it with me, 1 idea per slide. Have I made my point? Beating a dead horse. One idea per slide. And again, that is because that is what your brain can process. That will help so much in terms of your ability to be persuasive when you communicate through slides. The second part is 7, and this is no more than 7 words per slide. And this one is not an immutable law, but it's a really, really firm guideline. Now, I've broken it a few times myself, even in this webinar. So that's why it's not immutable law, it's a guideline. The more you endeavor to be concise, to remove extra words, to make your statement as succinct and powerful as possible, the more effective your pitch is going to be. And 7 is a great number for that. So aspire to make each slide have no more than 7 words. All right. The 140 really is about shareability. And most of us want our presentations to be shared these days, right? With the exception of something under NDA that's like top secret or government stuff or confidential health information. But anyway, most of us want to share our content. Content is a great currency. And 140 characters or less helps make it easier to tweet it, right? To share it. So there might be some things in this presentation today that you're like, that's a really good point. I want to tweet that. Guess what? It's probably going to be 140 characters or less. So again, 17, 140, the 1 being the most important, 7 is the next most important, and 140 is the least most important, but those 3 guidelines are super, super powerful for simplicity. Let's take an example of simplicity applied. So when Steve Jobs first introduced the first generation iPod, he could have had a slide like this, right? When he's at the conference and he's telling you how it's the first portable music player that weighs a mere 6.5 ounces, and it's just the size of a sardine can, and it's got great capacity and long battery life, and it's really fast to transfer data from a device to blah, 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 right? Some of you are probably looking at this and thinking, this is a pretty good slide. Yeah, maybe that's what he did show. Maybe that's what he did show. But you can already see it's breaking the 17, 140 rule, right? There's not just one idea per slide here. There's 7. And there's definitely more than 7 words. And I don't think this is tweetable. And so this is my attempt to give you an example of this. Here is what Steve did show. 1,000 songs in your pocket. Boom! 1 idea, 5 words, 1 simple image. And you get it, right? Yeah. Yes, Jason, you get it. Yep. So you guys, you see the power, right? The pro tip I want to throw in here is to practice Kanso, which is a Japanese Zen art. And it's all about omitting or excluding anything that is non-essential, right? It's almost like I think about this when I'm getting dressed in the morning. Okay, so I can wear all this stuff. I can put on a ring, a bracelet, makeup, lipstick, etc. The thing is, I don't need any of this. My kids point this out to me all the time. Mom, you don't need to wear lipstick to go to the grocery store. True. And you don't need a lot of the stuff you put in your slides to make your point. That's what Kanso is. So I'm going to show you an example of that in slides. So take a look at this chart. It's a very, typical classic chart. I think it's just one of the default bar charts that's available in PowerPoint or Keynote. So if we were to apply the principle of Kanso and start to remove or omit anything that's unnecessary, it would look like this. Step 1, I'm going to omit the grid lines that were there, right? Those grid lines were not essential to communicating the essence of this chart. And if anything, I think they created a distraction, some visual clutter. So I got rid of those. Step 2, bye-bye label on the vertical axis. You don't need that either because it's sort of redundant to what the title of the chart currently says, right? Number of bikes sold 2002 to 2007, and the label said, number of bikes sold according to sales records. Well, I could tell you that they're sales records. You don't need that. That's not essential. I think it's even assumed. All right, step 3, bye-bye logo. You do not need to have your logo on every single slide. You really, really, really don't. Okay? You have your logo on the cover slide or on one pivotal slide. And then if your audience doesn't know what your logo is or the name of your company or who you are, you got bigger problems than what I can teach you in this webinar. But removing it is practicing the art of Kanso and removing that clutter, that noise that frankly is being ignored anyway, but is creating a little mental distraction. So bye-bye logo. All right, the next step is a little more subtle. So watch as I transition. You see that? All I did was change the color and the thickness of the lines of the two axes. And that might seem really unimportant, but again, I think it takes away from that visual noise, that weightiness, right? That just kind of keeps you from seeing the data more clearly and the point of the slide more clearly. Okay. So the final pro tip builds on the last one. We're not done with that chart yet. And that is that you don't want to make your audience work. Okay, right? So we were here. We cleaned up the slide. We got rid of all the clutter and noise and just made it easier to see the point. But the title still says number of bikes sold 2002 to 2007. Is that really what you want me to feel, think, and do? That's just information. What is the point? Well, maybe the point is, oh my God, we hit a milestone. We sold over 5,000 bikes in 5 years. We thought it would take us 10 years to get that. Okay, that's one option. I don't actually know what the key point is, so I'm kind of making this up. But that headline is so much more meaningful as to me as someone in the audience than number of bikes sold. Or you're just stating the facts. Okay, when I see it this way, now I get it. I get where you're leading me a little more, right? Or maybe the point is that this was almost 1,000% increase in sales in 5 years. And yeah, some of you are pointing out that it's also powerful because we changed the font a little bit in the headline and we added some bold. Yeah, so I added some more visual cues to really make it easy. I'm sort of spoon feeding the core message to the audience. Like, here's this data. Here's the point. Here's what I want you to think, feel, and do. You with me? Okay. Cool. Step number 3, start strong. Start strong. And that doesn't mean you have to play Van Halen and rock out. Although, it can work. Start strong. Here's why. You got 20 seconds before your audience is like, what's for lunch? Ooh, I got that email. Oh, I really need to respond to that message and I'm bored. And 20 seconds is actually pretty good if you think about it, because like websites, right, that data is, I think, 3 seconds these days. Our attention spans keep shrinking. Matt, or whoever it was that noticed my ADD squirrel picture that I posted on Facebook today, exactly. Like, we are all distracted and distractible. And when people come to your pitch or presentation, you get a little bit more grace because either they have to be there, right, because you're the boss, or because they agreed to hear what you have to say because there might be a real opportunity, a real thing they care about, right? Whether it's a session in a conference, a workshop they're attending, a class you're teaching, a webinar that offers to give them some value. Whatever it is, they'll give you 20 seconds because, well, they took the time to be there. But 20 seconds is not a lot of time. And what I see so many people do, the big, huge mistake, is they waste it on the ass. Yes, I said ass. Yes, that is an ass. But let me explain. They waste it on the ass. The ass is the agenda start slide. Because you know what I'm talking about? Come on, admit it. Admit it if you've given them the ass. I know. Okay, I'm not going to say any names, but some of you are putting your tail between your legs and admitting that you do it. It's because we've been taught this is what we should do. We've been taught, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them what you told them, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, agenda start slide, tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Really, people? Like, no. Imagine if you were watching your favorite TV show and this is how it started. Today, on the episode of Friends, Rachel and Ross are going to hook up again, but then it's not going to work out, and Rachel's going to feel confused, and Ross is going to be sad. Oh, and Joey's going to try out for a part on this show, and those are all the things that are going to happen. You ready? Now watch, right? And that goes on for like 3 minutes. You're like, please just get to the point. I just want to watch my show. The same thing happens with presentations, right? I could have started this off and said, I'm going to tell you the 6 simple steps, and we're going to go through this, and then I'm going to show you the tips. No, let's just get to it, people. Assume your audience wants to hear whatever valuable thing you have to say. Another reason why the word ass works so well here, because when you use the ass start, you assume things you shouldn't, which is that your audience wants to be bored. No, you have 20 seconds to hook them or lose them. An ass is no bueno, no bueno. Okay, so alternatives to the ass are, number 1, tell a story. Stories are, I think, far and away the best way to strongly begin a presentation. It could be a personal story. That's very powerful. It could be a story about a customer or a friend or even something you read about. It doesn't have to be your story. Some people struggle with, like, I don't have a great story. It can be something that you read about that inspired or moved you. But telling a story and starting there. Tell the story of Ross and Rachel. Tell about Joey's audition, right? That's what the show would do. That's a very powerful way to start. And humans love stories. We've been telling them around campfires, in churches, in conference rooms, in coffee shops for eons. Before we even had the written printed word, we would tell stories on the walls of caves. We would paint the stories in picture. This is actually a 1,500 plus year old cave in France. We love stories because they have heroes around whom we can rally, right? We have a united person or thing we want to support. And they have villains that we love to hate together, that we want to triumph and overcome. Stories help us remember, right? I bet if you think about the last 3, 5, 10 presentations you've heard, you probably don't remember most of them, honestly, right? Maybe you remember sort of what the topic was, but if there was a good, compelling story, yeah, that you remember, right? And that you'll tell. I've come home and told stories from compelling presentations to my children because they were great stories. And that goes on and that sticks with me, and that becomes an example, and that becomes really memorable and powerful. This, my friends, is not a story, okay? If your deck looks like this, no bueno. This is not a story. Another great way to start really strongly is to ask a question. So, for example, I could have asked you, aren't you sick of pulling all-nighters to get ready for a big opportunity only to feel like a deflated balloon when it doesn't go the way you want? Wouldn't you rather know that you can pitch with confidence, that you will ace this pitch and every pitch because you've got the right process and the right tools, et cetera, et cetera? Whatever your question is, it could be a hypothetical question. It could be, imagine if is a great way to start, but basically a question is, again, a much better way to start than with some ass. And the third way I love to start strong is to make a provocative statement. And by provocative, I don't mean you have to throw in a 4-letter word or say something insulting. In fact, please don't insult your audience. But by provocative, I mean, thought-provoking, the kind of question that makes you lean in. My best example or metaphor for this is, when you're watching, there's like an ad right before the 11 o'clock news, and they're like, live at 11, the thing in your kitchen cabinet that might be killing you. Stay tuned for detail. It's like that, right? It's that thing that you're like, I have to know what's in my cabinet that's going to kill me. Honey, check the cabinets, right? So it's that version of the statement, something that's surprising and simple and gets your audience to lean in. It's your hook, right? It's what journalists call a hook. Okay, so that's how you start strong. Let's move on to number 4. Visuals more than words. Visuals more than words. So this is talked about a lot lately. I'm again, probably not the first one to tell you visuals are more important than words, but let me tell you why. Let me give you the neuroscience behind this. The human brain processes visual information 60,000 times faster than it processes text, words. I'm going to prove it. Read this sentence, my friends. A set of points in a plane equidistant from a given point. Go ahead and type it in the chat box if you know what that is. A set of points in a plane equidistant from a given point. Got some smarties guessing here. It's a circle. It's a circle. But here's the thing. The time it took you to read that sentence and figure out, oh, it's a circle, was 60,000 times slower than when I showed you the circle when you were like, duh, circle, right? And even if I had written out the word circle, okay, even I had not bothered to give you the definition and then you have to read the definition, figure out what the definition is, just the word circle, which you recognize instantly, still 60,000 times slower than the visual. If that is not a powerful reason to be more visual in your presentations, I don't know what is. Oh, wait, yes, I do. This fact. Visuals are also 6 times more easily recalled by the human brain. For whatever reason, we get it faster and we remember it longer. And that's what you want, right? You want people to get it and remember it. So that is why visuals more than words. I'm going to show you an example here in actual slide format. So here's a slide I put together about Iceland, one of my favorite countries, the land of fire and ice, right? So Iceland is located between the North Atlantic and the Arctic Oceans. It is the most sparsely populated country in Europe, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read the rest of it because you guys are already probably reading it. You can't help yourselves. That's what happens when people put sentences next to bullet points on slides. Let's compare it to this slide. And while this slide is on the screen, I can still tell you that Iceland is geologically active, one of the most geologically active countries on the planet. It is geologically the youngest country because it's got so many active volcanoes. The entire interior of it is volcanically active. It's got multiple glaciers, and that's why it's called fire and ice. But despite all of this, it's unbelievably temperate for how close it is to the Arctic Circle, because it sits on the Gulf Stream, and that Gulf Stream just creates this warm water effect that keeps it pretty mild all year long. So I can tell you every single thing that was in those bullet points while you look at this gorgeous slide, and you can almost smell the sulfur rising out of that volcano and sort of hear the lava, right, like moving and the glacier crackling around it. And it makes you feel something more, and you will remember this, I promise you, far longer than you remember the bullet points and the little flag I showed you on the slide before. Yes, yes, amen. Okay, visuals more than words. Number 5 is also a more than statement. In this case, feelings over logic. The heart over the brain, okay? Making your audience feel more than you make them think. That's why I formulated that 3-question sequence we talked about in step 1 that way. What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to think? What do you want them to do? There's a reason for this. Again, science is behind this. See, if logic alone were enough, if like data and logic and facts and figures were enough to really persuade people, I'm pretty sure nobody would smoke. You guys can agree or disagree, and any of you smokers out there, no offense, listen, we all have our guilty pleasures, but I'm certain that if it were just based on logic, if that's how we actually made our decisions, the facts would persuade you unequivocally that smoking is a terrible idea, and you would stop. But it's not all about logic, is it? It's not. Because what happens when emotions are triggered, and this is why they are so powerful in any kind of communication, is because they trigger a flood of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain. It does a lot of things. But its main impact with regard to experiencing something someone shares or tells you or something you experience viscerally is that dopamine acts like a huge neon sign going, hey, remember this? This is like really important. Hello, look at this. Remember, don't forget this. This made you feel something, right? Like you unleashed the dopamine beast, and the dopamine beast is like, don't forget this stuff. That's why you want to make people feel, because that's what happens, right? When something someone shares with you inspires you, brings you to tears, scares the crap out of you, just makes you feel whatever the emotion is, desire, jealousy, you name it. It triggers that dopamine. It like pulls open the gate. It all floods out, and that imprints on your brain, and it sticks. And that's what we want. So now, how do you make people feel, right? Because some of you are already putting in the chat box, my stuff is boring and there's no feeling, right? I'm not talking about saving pandas or babies or whatever. This is like, we're selling widgets. We're selling semiconductors. I get it. Pro tip number 1 to help you out. You can create feeling and mood through visual nuance, right? This is what people that design retail spaces or restaurants or hotels think about this stuff, right? They think about how to engage the senses and to set the mood for you visually, for starters. So one way that I do that when I apply it to presentations, one of the things we actually do these in Ace the Pitch is we create mood boards. So once you know what you want your audience to feel, think, and do, and you have that core message identified, you can say, okay, so I want them to feel that change is in order, for example, or I want them to feel taken care of and elegant. And so the 2 mood boards you're looking at sort of apply to those 2 possibilities. The one on the left has a very gritty, industrial sort of feel. We're using a lot of images of warehouses and pipes and so forth, and sort of raw interiors of buildings. The colors sort of suggest, metals with the yellow, kind of like that caution tape. And even the typography has this very gritty, deconstructed feel to it. On the right, on the other hand, we have a completely different visual mood, right? We're talking British elegance and sophistication. You sort of expect everyone to be speaking with a very refined British accent, which I cannot fake. I am terrible at accents. I won't even try. The colors are more sort of vivid and light, and it feels like someone should be serving you tea, and it's a completely different mood, right? Completely different feeling. So that is one way to create some feeling in your presentation, even if your subject matter doesn't naturally lend itself to opening up the dopamine floodgates. Another way, another very powerful way, is pro tip 2, using evocative words. So I love sharing this example. This is a quote from the film Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams is standing up on the desk and he's saying to this classroom full of adolescent men, he's saying, you must write better. You must not be lazy. And he says specifically, so avoid using the word very because it's lazy. Okay, a man is not very tired. He's exhausted. He's exhausted. And don't use very sad. Use morose. Morose is so much more sad than very sad, right? And then he says, language was invented for one reason, boys, to woo women. And in that endeavor, laziness will not do. And it will not do in wooing your audience, no matter what it is you ultimately want them to do. So just using evocative words, morose, right? Exhausted, powerful. So think about that when you're thinking about your 7 words or less per slide. And the final tip is engaging the senses, which sort of brings in the first 2 and then some. Remember what I was saying a few moments ago about people that design hotels and retail spaces and restaurants really think about this. So they think about the visual language of the space. They think about the texture of the chairs, and they think about the kind of music that's playing in the background, and they think about maybe having, some sort of a fish tank or some sort of running water sound that creates a sense of calm. This happens in the spas a lot, right? So engaging the senses. Even when I was showing you before that image of an ashtray, just that flat image of an ashtray, some of you, I bet, viscerally were like, oh, because you can almost like smell it, taste it, or maybe you quit smoking recently and you're like, oh God. And then when I show you this, you're like, I think it's lunchtime, Marta, right? Engaging the senses through imagery, through language, and even in the way you tell a story, right? So just describing the story, taking a moment to explain not only where your character, your hero was, but what the temperature was, what they were wearing, what they were sitting on, how they felt, what music was playing in the background, the sound of leaves rustling in the trees, etc., etc. All right, nap time's over. Number 6, our final one, is to rehearse. Rehearse. Every time I say this, you guys are like, but I pulled an all-nighter. Yes, I know, exactly. When you spend, when you sort of wait until the last minute to get the slides done, rehearsing is tough. But you know what else is tough? Acing the pitch if you didn't rehearse. True story. Now, I'm not going to get into all the mechanics of rehearsing. I'm going to share a few tips. I'm not going to get all to the mechanics because, frankly, this is the thing that it needs to come last, but it also needs to be thought about as part of your overall process. And I'm going to share an example with you of how I had to apply this and some of my getting to this point. So a couple years ago, I was the head of brand and buzz at a company called HubSpot. And I was in charge of their very first inbound marketing conference. It's a conference that now I think has been running for 5 years or so. I think they now have like 20,000 people that come every year. And this was the very first year we did it, though. And I was in charge of the overall event, but in particular, the high stakes part was helping our co-founders give their conference keynote, right? 2,500 people, media, press, etc., our first big show, and they're going to spend an hour talking about the vision of the company and new product rollout and so on and so forth. Really big, huge stage, 80-foot screen. Like I said, 2,500 people, kind of a big deal. Now, the year before, I had also worked with them on this, and guess what? We stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning working on the slides. There was no time to rehearse. We learned our lesson the hard way. Not that it was terrible. Those guys are awesome, brilliant men, and they still do a great job. But this time we were like, we're going to take this up. We're going to ace this thing. And so we ended up going through a process similar to what I teach in Ace the Pitch. We started off with Post-it notes. We started off with story sketches, spent a lot of time kind of reworking the basic story and ultimately turning it into a storyboard. What you're seeing here is the template that I share with my students that uses colors to outline or to indicate the different sections of a presentation. So the pink are the call to action rally cries, and the yellows are the key points, and so on and so forth. Get into all that in the class, but basically we start off by really making the story clear. Of course, we find shortcuts where we can, right? This is a big deal and you need your shortcuts. So we use all kinds of tools and resources to hack, as they say, and ultimately to create a beautiful deck. And then we rehearsed the crap out of it. So for what was a 60-minute keynote, we spent roughly 60 hours working on the story, the basic story, the script, the structure of it. 60 hours creating the actual slides, and then finally 60 hours of rehearsals. Okay, Harvey's got a pitch in 4 hours. Harvey, I hope you ace it with these tips. But listen, don't panic when you're like, wait, I have 4 hours till my next pitch and I don't have 4 hours. I mean, do I have to practice for 4 hours? No. This is the ideal. But you got to rehearse. You got to practice that strong start. Every time you run through your material, you get better and better at the delivery of it, at the structure of it. You notice things like, oh, if I shared that example earlier, if I took a really long and meaningful pause right about now, that would be helpful, right? It's little things like that. And the more comfortable you are with the material, also the less nervous you are. And let's face it, most people are nervous when they speak in public. The annual survey they do of top fears among humans, number 1 is flying. Number 1 is dying. Number 3 is flying. Number 2, speaking in public. So every time you rehearse and go through the story, the better. Okay? So that's your 6th step, is to really actually rehearse, which requires you to do all the other stuff, not the night before. So just last month, I had an example I wanted to share with you. I was working with Carl and Greg. These guys are the co-founders of Evergage. Last month, they raised a Series B round of funding for their company that was $10 million. Now, I worked with them back when they were doing their Series A, but I was so excited when I saw this headline because it just reminded me of they went through this whole process essentially, right? They aced their pitch, this time without any of my help. But way back when, they came to me and said, we know this company is going to succeed. We believe in it. Here's our pitch. It's not working. Help us make this better. And we went through the process, all the steps I shared with you today, right? And what you're looking at here is sort of a snapshot of what their initial pitch looked like before the A round. And then now you're looking at what it looked like after. And what you can hopefully see, even though they're just thumbnails, is that we went from a sort of cluttered, noisy, visually not quite crisp, clear, not strong in terms of the start. Definitely more words than visuals, definitely missing that heart over brain. But that's what we built into the second version. And I am so proud of them. They got $4 million in that first A round that I helped them with, but then they went on to do the $10 million B round without me, based on what they learned through Ace the Pitch. So I bring the question now to you. How would things change for you if your next presentation was insanely great, right? Like, would you completely blow your sales quota out of the water, right? Would you land that big account? Would you just bring home the best client you've ever had? Would you get the promotion you've been hoping for, or maybe get hired at that company you've been trying to get hired at? Whatever your goal is, whether it's going to grow your business or improve your career, I promise you that if you follow these 6 steps, they will help you up your game and ace your pitch. But remember when I promised you in the beginning there was more, right? Like, here's the 6 steps kind of quickly, and there's a lot more. So there's so much more. There's only so much I can bake into 6 steps in 45 minutes. So remember I mentioned Ace the Pitch a bunch of times? That is where you can really get so much more. So in a nutshell, Ace the Pitch is a 6-week online course that I teach that transforms mere mortals into presentation aces. And it's basically a video-based training program over 6 weeks. Each week I release a new module. Each module has 18 video lessons. Sorry, each module has 3 video lessons, so there's 18 total. And a bunch of step-by-step video tutorials that basically kind of pick up where we left off at this webinar, but go much deeper into each of those 6 steps. In addition to all the tutorials, you get transcripts in case of, you're the kind of person that likes to read, not just watch video. And we cover everything. We go deeply into storytelling, into how to apply simplicity. We do a ton of skill building, so you actually practice this stuff either on a presentation you're working on now or on a brand new one if you wish. We talk about presenting data. That's a big one. How do you turn data into meaning so it influences people? What's the difference between a presentation that's meant to be self-guided, like one you post on your blog or on SlideShare, versus one that you're giving in front of an audience? We talk about all the best tools to use, including lots of cool ones that I'm discovering all the time that save time and make you look like a design rock star, even if you have no design skills, which, P.S., I also have no design skills, or I fake it pretty well. We talk about performance and rehearsing and poise, all that stuff. Okay, we go really deep on all those things. In addition to that, everyone gets my Ultimate Killer Presentation Course Guide, which is like a digital tome of cheat sheets, checklists, all kinds of shortcuts, done for you templates, all my favorite resources, a bunch of skill building exercises that will help you basically apply all the things you're learning in the videos. And then you're going to join me every week for live office hours, which is very similar to this format, except you're in a small group setting instead of the big group we have today. And I'll teach a little bit of something in the beginning, sort of like a bonus training based on what this week's module was about. And then we have Q&A. And if you can't make it to the live office hours, no problem. You send in your questions ahead of time. We record them and you can watch the replay later. And it's also a great place to get feedback. If you're working on a slide and you want me to kind of do my quick makeover, things like that. So it's real one-on-one time, one-on-one help with me in addition to what you're getting through the videos. And then I also have a private Facebook forum for my Ace the Pitch students where Again, I give more bonus training. I answer questions. I'm available there to give you feedback. The community supports each other. There's actually some great networking that goes on there, people helping each other out. It's really awesome. So that's another component. So this whole package, I've spent like 10 plus years putting together. I'm so proud of it. And I know how effective it's going to be for you. Like I said, 10 plus years of my training, but I'm selling it for $997. But wait, I promised you guys goodies, right, for being on the webinar. So let me tell you what those are real quick before we go into Q&A. Okay. If you enroll in Ace the Pitch in the next 48 hours, I'm going to throw in a bunch of stuff. I'm going to give you my killer cover slide bonus, which is over a dozen of these gorgeous cover slides, like basically made for you to just change the title, change your name. You can swap in a different picture, but they're ready for you. So you don't have to think about how do I make a really sexy cover slide. I've made them for you. Okay. That will be one of your bonuses. I'll also give you my 10 awesome fonts package, which includes actually the 10 most amazing fonts, the ones I use all the time that I love, a how-to guide that shows you step-by-step how to pair them, like sizes and whatever, like little design tips basically, that makes it super easy for you to apply that for your next pitch. And the Mac Daddy, the perfect pitch deck. This literally is something that multiple CEOs of billion-dollar companies have paid me tens of thousands of dollars for me to create for them. It is the template of the exact story structure, the types of slides you need to use. It is the perfect pitch deck that it helped people like Carl and Greg that I mentioned before raise their $10 million B round, and many, many others. And I'm going to throw that in as a free bonus if you enroll in Ace the Pitch within the next 48 hours. And the last thing is I'm actually going to slash the price for you too. So again, you have 48 hours to enroll in the class, get all the bonuses, and pay $500 less than what I'm charging everyone else. And this isn't available anyplace else. This is only for my friends that come to my webinars. So yes, some of you are saying, what is the URL, Marta? Okay, sorry, there it is. There is the URL. One other thing before we get into the Q&A. So if you've got questions, stick around. One last thing. Not only am I slashing the price, but for those of you, because some of you have asked, who don't want to do the one payment up front, you can do 6 monthly payments of $97. So it's like, really, you got no excuse. You got no excuse not to take the reins of this and just ace your next pitch and make your presentation skills, your communication, persuasive communication skills so much more effective. In fact, I'm so sure that this will work for you that I am putting a double your money back guarantee behind this, which means not only would you get your money back if it doesn't work for you, but I'll pay you what you paid me, like times 2, right? So you take the whole class, you do all the lessons, you do all the work, and within the first 6 months afterwards, you don't earn your tuition back. I will send you a check for 2x what you paid, okay? That is how confident and certain I am that this is going to work for you and how committed I am to making sure that it works for you. So, okay, some people are already enrolling. I love it, you guys. You're the best. Okay, James, welcome to Ace the Pitch. All right, I'm going to switch over to Q&A so you guys can continue to enroll and ask your questions. I will give shout outs to those of you that sign up now. There is no shortcut to excellence, so just don't be on the fence. Join me for the 6-week class. We start on Tuesday. Michael, welcome to the class. Linda, welcome to Ace the Pitch. Okay, peer pressure, 3 of you are in. Who's next? All right, questions. In the meantime, so I've got a bunch of questions you guys have sent me here. I'm going to start with those. Okay, so what is the best way to get over the pre-presentation jitters? Yeah, okay, so we were talking about that, right? About how fear of dying, fear of flying, 1 and 3, and number 2 is fear of speaking in public. Yeah, we've all been there, myself included. The thing most people will tell you is to picture everyone in their underwear. Have you guys heard that one? Right? Picture everyone in their underwear and other sillinesses. Yeah, I hate that. I think that's a terrible idea. Like picturing everyone in your underwear is distracting and confusing, and I don't know how that makes anyone feel less nervous. More awkward, yes. So my biggest tip for that is to rehearse, first of all, right? Like I said before, the more you rehearse, the more comfortable you are with the material, the less of that there will be. But there will still be some inevitable, adrenaline. The way I combat that is some deep yogic breathing. Seriously. I will take, and I've tried everything, by the way. I've tried beta blockers. I've tried getting a lot of sleep, getting not enough sleep, no coffee, shot of tequila. I've tried a vigorous workout. Yeah, with different results for all those. But the one that works the best and the one that I recommend is deep, slow, conscious breathing, or yogic breathing is the best way to phrase that. If you do yoga, if you practice yoga, you know what I'm talking about. So take 5 minutes before you go out on stage and just get into a quiet place, close your eyes, sit comfortably, and just take some slow, conscious breaths. It actually does slow down your sympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system that's going, oh my God, we're going to die, right? It's the fight or flight response. And that's what creates like this and like the trembly voice and the sweaty palms and I have to go to the bathroom 7 times. The deep yogic breathing actually really works better than any of those other things I said before. So that's my big tip for that. We go into a lot more suggestions and tips and ways to get you ready, but that one I just love to share because I feel your pain when you have that problem. How important is it to have a consistent look and feel from one presentation to the next? That's a good question. It's particular because it thinks about like branding, right? I ask myself this question all the time too. And frankly, I think consistency is important more within a presentation than from presentation to presentation, in my opinion. And here's why. Because if every presentation you create has the same template, the same color, the same look, they all start to look the same. Like, have you ever looked at like the SlideShare portfolio page of a big corporation, like a publicly traded company? I won't name any names. They often all look the same, right? They use the same cover slide. I see this at conferences too, right? They give you that template. You got to use this template for the conference. They all look the same. Visually, that is boring. And that makes it very difficult for you to, as an audience member, to decide where you want to put your attention. And a confused mind says no. So that's why I think consistency from presentation to presentation does not make sense. Also because, referencing point number 5 or step number 5, you want people to feel something. And so visually, you might be creating a mood board for this presentation that's meant to inspire people and make them feel, motivated and driven. That's very different than this one that's meant to make them go, oh my God, you're doing it wrong. You need to fix. This is a problem you got to fix, right? So different goal, different purpose, different audience, different visual language required for those. What I meant about consistency within a presentation is that, and this is a thing we go into a lot in Ace the Pitch, too much to go into here, but the short version is within a presentation, it's really important to give people visual cues so they know this is a really important slide, right? This is a less important slide. This is like filling in the detail. This is a really important slide. So we go through, there's lots of smart and simple but powerful ways to do that within a presentation. So if you enroll, you will get the scoop on that. Okay, cool. Do you have a payment? Yes, I have. You must have missed that. There is a payment plan. You can do 6 payments of $97, or you can pay all at once $497. But that's only for 48 hours, guys. If you wait longer than 48 hours, you can still enroll in the class. We start on Tuesday officially, but you'll pay full price and you won't get all the goodies. Okay. So what happens if? Oh, I had a presentation that wouldn't work. What is your suggestion when your slides just poop out? Yes, they poop out. So yeah, I've had that happen too. It's really scary, and especially if you're already nervous. So that's where the 5 pitch slide is really helpful. 5 slide pitch, sorry. If you know that as your backbone, you can pretty much wing it, right? Because that's your basic story. Everything else is filler. If you have like a 50 slide deck, sometimes that's tough to remember all the little nuances unless you've done it 100 times. But if you know your 5 slide pitch, you can basically convey your core story. You can tell them what is, the situation, the problem, the opportunity, the solution, and the call to action. And you don't need slides for that. And I have actually been to large conferences with thousands of people in the audience where speakers had no slides, 0 slides, where they just told great stories and kept the audience engaged through their storytelling. So, but that's my way of dealing with that. And I've been in that situation before. If you know your 5-slide pitch, you can still do it. It also works when the CEO shows up really late, and you only have 5 minutes instead of the 45 minutes you planned on. So that's a really smart one. Okay, what about style as opposed to template for cover slides? Okay, so this question, I'm not sure I quite get this question, Matt. What about style? Maybe, Matt, if you type me some more, I can try that. I'm going to move on to a different one, though, since I don't quite get that one. All right, what is the ideal number of slides? I get asked that question all the time. And the short answer is it depends. It depends on how much time you have to present. It depends on your audience, and it depends on the story you're trying to tell. So, for example, this webinar, I had, I think, about 160 slides, right? I'm following my own rule of 1 idea per slide. So, I think the average person would have condensed that down to like 30 slides maybe. And each slide would have had a lot more stuff on it, and you would have had 6 ideas per slide or whatever the math is there. So I could say the answer is 160 slides, or it could be 10. It really, really depends. The core question really isn't what's the number. It's how do you get the point across in the most impactful, compelling way possible. And so you need the great story structure, right? You need to understand your 5-slide version, and you need to sort of build from there, following the rules I outlined today. That is a thing that we spend a lot of time on in Ace the Pitch, because everyone's got different slides, and my boss wants me to include these, and you're working with like a legacy presentation that you're trying to improve or revamp. I get it. Some of them have too many slides, some of them have not enough because it's all crammed in. So it really does depend, but the more important thing is to remember the rules I shared with you today. Okay. How do you feel about telling jokes? Well, I think humor is good. I think whatever your style is good in terms of your actual delivery and presentation. But, personally, I'm terrible at telling like jokes, if that's what you mean. So if you're a really good joke teller, if you do stand-up comedy as like a side gig, by all means, if it helps for your audience, go for it. But I think the real key is it comes in the rehearsal and the poise part that we cover in module 6 of Ace the Pitch. We spend a lot of time talking about how you appear, how you stand, how you do this. Hi, my name is Marta, right? Like up talk. We cover a lot of little nuances in terms of your actual delivery, things that you are probably doing, you don't even know you're doing them. You don't even know you're doing them. We'll tease those apart, and we'll rebuild you like the bionic woman or man. So that'll be better. Okay. Donna, welcome to Ace the Pitch. So glad you're here. And Matt came back with another question. Using about themes. Yeah, okay. So Matt's question earlier about styles or themes. So PowerPoint has a lot of built-in styles and themes. I hate them personally. No offense if any of you work for Microsoft. I'm sure you are awesome, smart people, and you're doing the best you can. But I personally don't like them. I think I just don't like them. I don't think they're serving the 6 steps that we discussed today. That said, I have created those for clients before. I have students who use them because they're required to, because it's part of their brand guidelines. So we'll make the best of that if that's your scenario. But in the course, I will show you what I consider to be essential ingredients of an actual, visual slide language, and what do I consider to be unnecessary clutter or stuff that you want to conzo out of there. Okay? I hope that helps. Oh, I'm getting such nice comments from you guys. Thank you guys so much. So listen, all of you that have joined, thank you so much. We start Tuesday. It's going to be great. I can take one more question for those of you that are still here. And those of you that have to go, if you still have a question you want to ask, just email it to support@martify.com, or hit me up on Twitter @mzkagan, or go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/martify. Any of those places you can ask me a question. I'm more than happy to answer them. The rest of you who have to go, Thank you. This has been awesome. But I have one more question I will take before we wrap, and that is from Dina. And Dina wants to know, how long on average does it take you to create a deck like the one you shared today? Okay, that's a good question. Again, my short answer is it depends, but I normally plan sort of the model I shared with you with when I was talking about HubSpot and the experience of helping the co-founders create their keynote for that inbound marketing conference. I assume if it's a 60-minute presentation, on average, I'm going to spend 60 hours putting together the story, 60 hours creating the slides, and then 60 hours working on the rehearsal. But that's high stakes, right? That's thousands of people in an audience and like tons of money behind the production. If I'm talking about a pitch or a webinar for that matter, right? Where you're not even in front of people. I mean, you are, but you're not in a room full of people. So it's a little bit different. In that case, I assume roughly 3 hours per slide. If you were to hire me to do your slides for you, I assume 3 hours per slide, and then I base my project or hourly rate based on that. So 3 hours per slide. I didn't spend 450 hours on this deck at this point because this material is so familiar to me and I teach it all the time. So in that case, I can bang it out faster, and I have my Post-it notes are they're like solid wood, solid gold. But yeah, that's roughly my estimate for doing it right. And then 3 hours isn't just about creating the slide. It builds in that factor of the story, right? And the flow and what's the main point, what's the core message. So anyway, good. I'm glad that answered your question. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I am so grateful that you shared this time with me today, and I want you all to go out there and ace your pitch. I'll see you real soon.